Well, since YouTube decided to accept my resolution instead of once again, YouTube, why do you do this? YouTube, why do you do this? Every single time I type proof of and Russia in my tags, do you give me this bullshit message of unsupported resolution? And you try to reject my stream and keep me from being able to fucking present my proof of what Russia's been doing. You seem to have questionable allegiance at best, YouTube, you supposed fucking American corporation. The fact is, all you fucking people belong in jail just like Manafort. Don't worry. It'll happen. I guarantee. See, you were the people that were saying, "Oh, but my dear commander, he's just a simple campaign manager." About Paul Manafort, right? Yeah. Let's just see how that worked out.
So he's been cooperating already for 4 days. Prosecutors spelled out that one of the things he pled guilty to today was a foreign-funded, illegal, and somewhat bizarre effort a few years ago to smear an Obama cabinet official as an anti-Semite for not supporting Paul Manafort's client in Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych. That was spelled out in detail not only in the written statement of the offense, but also in the verbal presentation by prosecutors today. And it seems clear from the context, even though they never said her name, that the cabinet official, Paul Manafort, was organizing this effort to smear, to promote pro-Russian interests back in 2012, was then Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. So if this Manafort plea and his cooperation ends up linking back to a later foreign-funded, illegal, bizarre effort to smear Hillary Clinton for pro-Russian interests, not in 2012, but in 2015 and 2016 when she was running for president against Donald Trump, then this is probably the first sign of it in Manafort's guilty plea today. He pleads guilty to operating as an illegal, unregistered foreign agent, running a scheme in this country to try to smear Hillary Clinton unfairly for not properly aligning herself with the pro-Russian interests he was working for. Can't imagine there might be any parallels with that we're going to hear of down the line, right? This is the 8th person convicted or pleading guilty in Robert Mueller's investigation of Russian interference in the election. Robert Mueller is now batting 1,000 in terms of convictions and guilty pleas from everybody who he has pursued in court. He's also now batting 1,000 in terms of securing cooperation from every single American who has been charged in this case, including the President's National Security Advisor, the President's Deputy Campaign Chair, and now the President's Campaign Chairman, who himself has decades worth of links to the former Soviet Union and whose business partner is believed by the FBI to be himself linked to Russian intelligence agencies. Half the world watching this is now expecting a pardon for Paul Manafort from the president. Like maybe as soon as tonight, right? Half the world expects that pardon. Half the world thinks that would be nuts. And there's no way. But honestly, what counts as too improbable anymore?
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
All right, Chris. Nobody thinks blowing you is worth a subscription to YouTube. Welcome to Lost-Begotten channel, everybody.
gold and yours and mine and walk to the sand. Oh, baby, you know it's fine. But now you done and piss me off. You ain't done something you shouldn't have done. Baby, I'm mad. I'm going on. Oh, I'm going on.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, and welcome back to the only YouTube channel with the baby Jesus. Where is he? Where? Oh shit, that's me. Don't tell. Shh. Don't tell anybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Lost-Begotten channel. Don't worry, I'm still lost. You didn't find me. This is just an illusion. No. Scratch that. You're just an illusion. No. Fuck. Everything else that you've ever been taught and think that you know, well, that's pretty much the illusion. Turns out that I'm like the one thing that's true in this world. Oh. This report that we just played a clip of comes from a couple days ago. And I guess I just didn't pay attention all the way to the end. Or got distracted or dozed off or something. I don't know. I think I fell asleep to that particular report. Because, you know, it was just like a pleasant little lullaby. Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, they're convicted. You know. Just all my worries washed away. You see, crazy doesn't show up on camera, and crazy doesn't show up in jail, does it? Doesn't show up in court transcripts, doesn't show up in plea bargains. Basically, public confessions. But you see, before I get into exactly what I want to brag about here, and this is obviously a one of those braggadocious videos. Oh my god, I just can't even believe he's a part of our fucking culture, mentality, just anything. Braggadocious. Now, obviously the only reason why I would ever brag is because it's necessary. Because the thing that I happen to have to brag about is one of them things that you have to understand to have a clue about reality. Okay. Now, I wanted to get this little logic out of the way. I did a little talk-to-type note on my cell phone earlier. Oh, look at me upgrading from pen and paper, pencil and notepad or whatever. And, I just want to say this to people who, and I empathize with this, I understand this completely, don't like to admit that you're wrong. Now, while I don't, suffer from this problem anymore, I remember what it's like to want to argue a point. But I will say this, I never became one of those people who would resort to any sort of deception or hyperbolism or loophole arguments to justify a point. I've just never had that in me as a rational person. Like, I want to objectively find truth. But, having an innate stubbornness, I am stubborn. I'm very stubborn. Like, even when it's, like, logic, I'm like, oh, I'll gradually move over to the other person's point of view, but it's, I gotta be careful and ask questions and, sometimes I have to make it about my own little personal self-discovery journey versus them actually being right. I was like, no, I'm just going to, discover that you're right a different way. Oh, okay. Then I'll discover why I was wrong, and then make it a big learning experience for everyone. Just so I don't have to admit that you, who I don't like, is right. But that's only when it's somebody I don't like. Usually, I think. For the purposes of this joke. Yeah. But, when it came to general anti-government conspiracy, the general anti-establishment, disestablishmentarianism, waking up in 2011, realizing me was me, right? Meant realizing human me was a fucking moron. And I had to realize, I had to just suddenly awaken to the fact that a lot of these things that I thought, that even some of them that made me feel like I knew better than most people, okay? Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. Sorry about all the singy voice stuff. I'm just apparently happy to have my throat back. My sinuses are not quite cooperating, but I'm not all doped up on meds right now. I was just on the freaking NyQuil and the Theraflu and a Sudafed and just like every 2 hours just more shit. Just get this crap out of my face. But today I just got a little sniffly coffee going. I blew my nose and coughed and cobbed extensively before I started the broadcast, so hopefully I'll have a few minutes before I'll have to do it again. But yeah, admitting you're wrong, admitting that you were mistaken, admitting that you were misinformed can be a very powerful thing, okay? And what's more is, America right now, we face a point where we really should be able to look at this in hindsight one day when we're all enlightened, right? As a period of God being merciful and making the truth obvious to us. Making our errors, making our very appalling natures, making the shittiness of us a result of propaganda, gives us an easy way to confess that we were wrong, an easy way to admit that those are not the way we should be. Those things are not qualities that we should have. And because that our enemies want us to be this way, we should find new strength into moving forward and turning over a new leaf, becoming better people, evolving, if you will. Growing and learning from the experience. Oh, what a concept, I know. Now, to read what I said earlier. The reason why willfully admitting you are wrong is the key to personal development is because at the point someone admits that they are wrong and realizes the amount of growth they can accomplish and experience from that admission, their ability to absorb information is no longer constricted by preconceived determinations. They absorb information that may disagree with them based upon the contingency that they may at a later date disagree with their current conclusion. This is the key to developing objective thought. This is the key to becoming a smart person. And if you want to walk around talking to other people like you yourself personally know, say, your ass from a hole in the ground, the first thing you need to do is realize that you're a human being, you're flawed, and you're fucking wrong about something. And it is one of the most rewarding journeys of self-discovery to try to just go back into, maybe not so much your relationships, maybe not with your family, but chances are you're going to find something if you really look hard enough, if you're really honest with yourself. You're going to find something. Some way you treated somebody at some point. And realize that you were wrong. And understand that that detestable person that you acted like that day wasn't really you. There were influencing factors. And to understand those influencing factors is to understand the problems that need to be solved to help other people heal their souls, to enhance their personal development. But anyways, I'm listening for the sound of coffee to be finished brewing. And I think I missed the sound of the popple, like when it turns into a little reptilian oak and starts hissing. And yeah, I think I missed that while I was talking just then. But doesn't that make sense, Mr. Conway? And apparently it doesn't make sense to the bot monitor who was just viewing for the first couple of minutes and then decided, they didn't like that flawless demonstration of logic. They didn't like that existential, philosophical revelation that pretty much everybody in the world needs to hear right now. Admitting you're wrong is how you go about expanding your mind. It is the key to open-mindedness. It is the key to becoming less of an easily influenceable freaking hairless ape and more of a calculating, computerized-like intelligence. something that is truly capable of objective and magnificent levels of thought, analysis, comparison, determination, right and wrong, good and evil. These things do exist. But the nature of evil is such that it has deceived the masses. And those deceptions have by and large influenced everyone, whether you know it or not. And aside from, and not barring people who have been subscribed to this channel for a long time, chances are you don't have a clue what the actual truth of all things is, or what the truth of your own government even is. There you go. Only idiots are never wrong. Cheers. So, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and play that Manafort indictment in its entirety for your viewing pleasure. And
we're also going to be talking in just a few minutes with the reporter who broke this.
Go ahead and make my coffee before we get on to talking about exactly why all of this is so relevant to what's going on right now, as well as being relevant to the technical definition of treason and patriotism.
News today at Vanity Fair. On a day that was already a potential disaster for the sitting president of the United States in terms of his own exposure and liability in the Russia scandal and the investigation by the special counsel's office led by Robert Mueller, on a day that was already a disaster for the president, Emily Jane Fox at Vanity Fair added significant fuel to the fire with her exclusive reporting tonight that longtime Trump Organization executive, longtime personal lawyer to the president, Michael Cohen, has not just pled guilty to 8 felony counts. He has not just named the president in court under oath as the person who directed him to commit 2 of those felonies, campaign finance violations. Emily Jane Fox reports tonight that Michael Cohen, in addition, has begun meeting with the special counsel's office himself. When Michael Cohen pled guilty to those 8 felonies last month, there was no formal cooperation agreement with prosecutors that was filed along with his plea. But this new reporting, if correct, it indicates that Cohen is cooperating. He's talking with the special counsel. We're going to be speaking with Emily Jane Fox about that news in just a moment. But of course, that news comes at the worst possible time for President Trump. We have been reporting for the last couple of days that there were signs, right? And there were anonymously sourced reports that the president's campaign chairman was himself starting to talk to prosecutors about pleading guilty in federal court rather than facing another extended federal trial. He was just convicted on 8 felonies last month in Virginia. He was facing another trial on more felony counts starting next week in federal court in Washington, D.C. And, you know, while the president choosing this now multiply convicted felon as his campaign chairman is itself a pretty big scandal as U.S. presidents go, and while there is certainly public interest in the legal fate of the president's campaign chairman, how many felonies is he going to go down for? How long is he going to spend in prison? What are his prospects for his appeal or for retrial? All the rest of it. While there's a lot of interest in all of that stuff, clearly the even larger stake here in terms of the country and the presidency is not just Paul Manafort's own fate and the fact that President Trump chose him as his campaign chair. The largest stake here is the prospect that the president's own fate, the president's own liability, might be significantly jeopardized by what's going on with Manafort. That Manafort, in an effort to try to lessen his own jeopardy, his own prison time, might finally decide to cooperate with the special counsel's office in their ongoing investigation of Russian interference in the presidential election and any potential role in interference by the president and his campaign. Right? That's the big kahuna, right? And it has always seemed very improbable. I mean, campaign chairman for sitting president pleads guilty to multiple felonies. Huge deal. Campaign chairman for sitting president pleads guilty to multiple felonies and also agrees to cooperate with prosecutors investigating the president himself. That has seemed impossible. That has seemed at least very, very improbable. Now that is what happened, and that is bigger than a huge deal. I mean, lots of reporting recently has wondered if a cooperation deal might happen. Most observers have thought there was no way, no how that Manafort would ever do this. If there's one thing Paul Manafort's not going to do, he's not going to cooperate. He would have done so by now if he was going to. Well, he is cooperating.
Coffee.
Fully. No holds barred. I personally almost can't believe it even now. Even though I've got it in writing. I just got the transcript. So I know that it happened, and now I can tell you exactly how it happened, word for word. You ready? Okay. Courtroom deputy. Your Honor, good morning. This morning we have case number 17-201-1, United States of America versus Paul J. Manafort, Jr. Mr. Manafort is present in the courtroom. Will counsel for the parties please approach the lectern? Identify yourself for the record. Mr. Weissman. Good morning, Your Honor. Andrew Weissman for the government. And with me at counsel table is Greg Andrus, Lorna Mosher, Kyle Freeney, Jeannie Rhee, and FBI Special Agents Omar Mizell and Jeff Weiland from the FBI. The judge. All right. Good morning. Then Mr. Westling. This is the defense side. Good morning, Your Honor. Richard Westling, Thomas Zenley, and Kevin Downing on behalf of Mr. Manafort. Good morning. The judge says, good morning. And I note that Mr. Manafort is present. The judge. So I understand the defendant wishes to enter a plea of guilty. Is that correct? Mr. Westling. That's correct, Your Honor. The judge. All right. Before we can proceed any further, he can join you at the lectern. And the courtroom deputy says, are you Paul J. Manafort, Jr.? Paul Manafort, the defendant. I am. Courtroom deputy. Are you the person named in the superseding information? Paul Manafort, the defendant. I am. Okay, so this is obviously the very start. This starts with the good mornings, right? And at this very early point in the proceeding, everybody there in the courtroom knows at least one important part of what's going to happen, right? The judge has said right off the bat, he's here to plead guilty, right? Yes, Your Honor. And then the reason there is a superseding information, which is what the courtroom deputy just asked there to Paul Manafort, superseding information, I know it's a weird phrase, but what that means is that the indictment laying out the charges that Manafort was about to go on trial for next week, that indictment has now been replaced with a superseding document, a superseding information, a criminal information, instead of an indictment now. And that's what happens when prosecutors are bringing charges against you, but you're not fighting those charges. You're not going to trial over them. You're going to plead guilty. So at this point, everybody in the courtroom knows he's going to plead guilty. Still a cliffhanger at this point. All right, so the judge says, so to get to the questions that I need to ask you in terms of your understanding of this morning's proceeding, can you tell me how old you are? The defendant, Paul Manafort, 69. The judge, and what is the highest level of education that you attained? Defendant, Paul Manafort, Juris Doctorate. The judge, and so obviously you can read and write? Paul Manafort, the defendant, I'm sorry? The judge, you can read and write? Paul Manafort, the defendant, I can. The judge, and where were you born, sir? Paul Manafort, New Britain, Connecticut. The judge, have you taken any alcohol or drugs in the last 48 hours? Paul Manafort, no. The judge, or any medicine that could affect your ability to understand
Hookers
what
and
you're doing?
blow! Hookers and blow!
Paul Manafort, no. The judge, have you ever received any kind of treatment for any mental illness or emotional disturbance? Paul Manafort, no. The judge, have you received a copy of the information, the new charges this morning, and the indictment that's pending against you? And have you fully discussed the charges and the case in general with your lawyers? Paul Manafort, I have. The judge, are you completely satisfied with the services of your lawyers in this case? Paul Manafort, I am. The judge, have you had enough time to discuss with them and discuss the case? Excuse me, to talk with them and discuss the case and the plea offer and whether or not you should accept it? Paul Manafort, I have. So they go through this preliminary stuff. You're okay, you're of sound mind, you are who you say you are. The judge then asks the prosecutor from Robert Mueller's office, the lead prosecutor, Andrew Weissman, to summarize the list of things to which Paul Manafort is going to plead guilty today, to describe his crimes. The judge says, Mr. Weissman, I would like you to explain orally what he's pleading guilty to and what this case would show if it went to trial. I'll tell you, Andrew Weissman then does. You see all these pages on screen here? He goes on for 18 straight pages of transcript without interruption. I'm not going to read you all 18 pages. We'll save that for the special. But You should know. He goes on and on and on and on, to the point where the judge is basically like, okay, wow, that's a lot. I mean, from page 16, Weissman says, let me start with the first one, which is the Foreign Agent Registration Act conspiracy. For page 27, he says, let me speak briefly now about the conspiracy to obstruct justice, the false and misleading submissions to the Department of Justice. Page 29, let me turn to the money laundering conspiracy. Page 30, turning to the tax and foreign bank account conspiracy. Page 32, turning to the witness tampering conspiracy. Just goes on and on and on. Finally, the prosecutor stops talking. After going on for 18 straight pages, telling the judge at the end of his remarks, basically he says, yeah, there's more in the statement of the offense here. I could go on, but it's all there in writing. At which point the judge exhales and says, all right, thank you. Turning to the defense,
You done?
The judge says, Mr. Wessling and Mr. Manafort,
Is that all?
quote, I believe it's fair to say that that's probably the longest and most detailed summary that has ever preceded this question. But is what the prosecutor just said a true and accurate description of what you did in this case? Defendant Paul Manafort. I did. It is. Judge, so did you in fact participate and coordinate in public relations and lobbying efforts in the United States on behalf of the Ukrainian government and Ukrainian government officials and or political parties? Paul Manafort, I did. The judge, and as part of that, did you conspire in fact with other people to avoid U.S. tax laws, foreign bank account disclosure laws, laws requiring registration as a foreign agent, and to violate the money laundering statute, and to make false statements to the Department of Justice in 2016 in conjunction with that lobbying work in the United States? Paul Manafort, I did. The judge, and did you also, in fact, conspire with at least one other person to obstruct justice by tampering with witnesses concerning the FARA allegations in 2018? Paul Manafort, I did. So after 18 pages of laying it out by the prosecutor, the judge sums it up, and Paul Manafort admits to the court, admits to the judge, I did these things. And now he has to admit what he's going to give up because he's pleading guilty. The judge says, quote, you're agreeing to plead guilty to 2 counts of conspiracy against the United States. Do you understand that if I accept your guilty plea in this case, you could receive a maximum sentence of up to 5 years in prison on each count? Paul Manafort, I do. The judge, and do you also understand that for each count you could be sentenced to pay a fine of up to $250,000 for each? Do you understand that? Paul Manafort, I do.
You may kiss your ass goodbye.
There are a significant number of forfeiture allegations in this case, and without going into too much detail, I want to make sure, Mr. Manafort, that you understand that as a result of this plea agreement, you are also agreeing to the forfeiture of a considerable amount of property. Do you understand that that includes 377 Union Street? Paul Manafort, I do. It also includes the real property at 29 Howard Street, apartment 4D. I do. Do you understand that it includes the Jobs Lane house in New York? I do. And funds held in an account at the Federal Savings Bank? I do. And funds seized from an account at Capital One? I do. And funds seized from another account at the Federal Savings Bank? I do. An insurance policy with Northwestern Mutual? I do. And real property at Baxter Street in New York? I do. And also real property at Fifth Avenue in New York? I do. He's forfeiting all of those things, bank accounts, insurance policies, lots and lots of real estate, to the government. The government alleges that he defrauded the government of $15 million in money that he didn't pay taxes on. Part of making that up, clearly, is handing over his ill-gotten gains and the things he committed crimes in order to attain as real estate. But that last question there from the judge, real property at Baxter Street in New York, and also real property at Fifth Avenue in New York, that's the last one she asks. At that point, that's actually the first reference to President Trump. Because the Fifth Avenue property that Paul Manafort agreed in court today to forfeit to the government, that is Paul Manafort's apartment at Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue. You might remember that Paul Manafort used the fact that he had an apartment at Trump Tower as one of the selling points for himself in his letter to the Trump campaign, in which he pitched himself for the campaign chairman job. Now, the Justice Department owns Paul Manafort's old apartment in Trump Tower.
Let me be one of your pimps. I'm already a good little bitch.
But then, this very next part of the hearing is the part that is probably what the president didn't expect, and definitely what the president didn't want to hear. This is really the boom in today's news. The judge, quote, Now, do you also understand that pursuant to this plea agreement, you are agreeing to cooperate fully and truthfully with the investigation being conducted by the Office of Special Counsel, including participating in interviews and debriefings, producing any documents in your control, and testifying and agreeing to delays of your sentencing at the request of the government? Do you understand that? Paul Manafort, I do. Judge, and these obligations under the agreement will continue even after your sentencing here and in the Eastern District of Virginia. Do you understand that? Manafort, I do. And I believe in the agreement it says you waive your right to have your counsel present for every interview and debriefing. Is that also correct? Paul Manafort, that's correct.
Wow.
So that's the boom here. That is the unexpected news today. I mean, him pleading guilty, which he does a short while later in the transcript. The judge says, are you prepared to tell me now whether you wish to plead guilty or whether you wish to go to trial? Manafort says, I am. The judge says, then what is your decision? Manafort says, I plead guilty. He pleads guilty. We knew that from the moment proceedings opened this morning, when the judge flat out said, you're here to plead guilty, right? We knew he was going to plead guilty from the moment he walked in the door. We did not know he would agree to cooperate. Now, based on the plea agreement, based on the back and forth with the judge today, from which we just got this transcript, it appears that Paul Manafort's cooperation agreement is the full Monty. He agrees to be fully debriefed and to attend all meetings at which his presence is requested. He agrees to give the government all documents and other material that may be relevant to the investigation. He agrees to participate in undercover activities. That's going to work now. Hi, my name is Mal Panafort. Could you speak into my lapel, please? I don't know why that seemed familiar to you. You can trust me, friend. Paul Manafort's not going undercover anytime soon, with or without the hair dye. He also agrees to testify at any proceeding, which means both trial or at grand juries. And this one's interesting to me. He agrees to be interviewed by law enforcement agents and or government attorneys, and he waives any right to have counsel during these interviews unless he submits the request in writing beforehand. So the judge singled this part out to ask him about. You know you can't have your lawyers there when you're talking to the investigators here, right? Paul Manafort, as part of this agreement, will have to talk to investigators and prosecutors about anything they want without his own lawyers present, unless he gets written permission in advance to have them there. I am intrigued by that. I'm also intrigued by this confirmation from the judge today that after this guilty plea and this cooperation agreement, Paul Manafort was sent back to jail today. And he will stay in jail until he is sentenced. And presumably he will not be sentenced until his cooperation is over to the satisfaction of the special counsel's office. So if you think about what's going to happen to Paul Manafort from here on out, he's going to go from court today, back to jail today, potentially to stay there for a very long time. I mean, could that be years while he continues to cooperate with the special counsel? And then after the end of his cooperation, then he will be sentenced for 8 felonies in Virginia and these 2 more in D.C., up to a maximum of 10 years in federal prison. And thereafter, the judge spells out that his cooperation responsibilities with the government will continue even after he is sentenced. Did I mention that this is the president's campaign chairman we're talking about here? So here's a few things to know. Prosecutors say that Paul Manafort gave his first proffer, his first offer of information, so his first cooperation, on Tuesday of this week. So he's been cooperating already for 4 days. Prosecutors spelled out that one of the things he pled guilty to today was a foreign-funded, illegal, and somewhat bizarre effort a few years ago to smear an Obama cabinet official as an anti-Semite.
And here we are, back at the beginning of the video. And if you're new to the channel, I know that what I was just doing with the little graphic camera thing there was probably kind of annoying, but I had fun. Overlaying. Oh man, come on. I just want to zoom in the right place. It's not letting me. No. No. Okay. Nope, 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 nope. It's just gonna be a prick. I'm gonna have to go like that. Okay. Okay. Now I've got it. Alright, everything's fine. Alright. But before we do, a recap of the shit that I said 3 years ago, a slightly different recap than we've been doing the past few days, but similar. We're going to talk about it as it relates to Hillary Clinton. Because, let me just say this before I go grab my coffee pot and top off my delicious but slightly too sweet coffee. The same way Donald Trump symbolizes everything that is wrong with this country, Hillary Clinton actually symbolizes what it means to be America. And I'm aware that, basically the YouTube has suppressed my voice because they have been guilty of programming you with the pre-programmed response of just rage. But Hillary, oh God, but Hillary. Anytime somebody says anything good about Hillary Clinton, you just get angry and your mind just starts to scatter, and you just start thinking of all these things that you've been told, and you're just, oh, but Hillary. It's just a damn shame. The fact of the matter is, you shouldn't feel that way about anybody. I don't get overwhelmingly angry when people say good things about Trump. I get overwhelmingly angry when people can't answer simple fucking questions and have to make loophole arguments because they can't stay on a subject because they have no footing. There's no solid ground for them to stand on, for sure. I'm getting angry at, a larger view. Morality. The rule of law. I'm getting angry at the false equivalency that, CNN basically raped our minds with before the election, and has been doing for years, actually. False equivalency. One of the most very dangerous things there is as far as the psychological warfare that's been going against us. And that pisses me off. That's different between the anger people experience with Hillary Clinton. And I'm sorry, I'm stuttering. I'm breathing only through my fucking mouth right now. But trying not to sniffle and snot on camera. I have passage, it's just all... yeah. But think about it. You know, when I'm angry about Trump, I'm angry because he's the fucking pussy grabber, okay? Shit that's obvious, shit that's provable. When people get angry about Hillary Clinton, it's based entirely on rumor, on innuendo, on things that have no evidence about them. But more importantly, and this is what takes understanding to realize, people get angry at Hillary Clinton because it's a pre-programmed response. And like I said, YouTube, Breitbart, Fox News, Facebook and Twitter have all helped this happen. Not only by promoting these tactics, these attacks, these just bullshit stories that lead to one conclusion, that have one motivation, and that come from one source, our enemies. But all the while, they've been silencing anyone like me. Not that there's anyone just like me, but you know, I still have not seen a single American YouTuber that started YouTubing because of the Ukraine conflict. And because, you know, like, I mean, we grew up learning a story about this guy named Paul Revere, the guy who rode through, you know, Massachusetts, I think it was, saying, the redcoats are coming, the redcoats are coming. And basically the Revolutionary War would have been lost. Which means, by the way, little dearies, and I could easily input this into a computer to prove it. Well, easily, I mean, it would take me probably about 14 weeks, because it's a tremendous amount of data. But, you know how they say if this and this happened and the Nazis won World War II, we'd all be speaking German? If the British won the Revolutionary War, we'd all be speaking Russian. The Chechen dialect in particular. King George. A phony fucking king. I wonder how hard it would be to dig up that secret. I wonder what little closet that's hiding in. King George, the Georgian. King George, the Cossack King of England. Now, this is one of those things where it's like, you know, I've been led into one story after another by my instincts, and this is something that I've not followed up on, but haven't heard anything about that yet. Carlos, I'll look into it after I'm finished. Okay. Remind me if I don't get back to it. Oh, ever since having my head stomped on while I was asleep in jail. I can't fucking... I mean, granted, I'm not exactly sober and fucking competent and serious when I make these broadcasts and all. You know, I'm either fucking half asleep or fucking loopy on something, right? But I do alright. Not that I'm much better when I'm wide awake. Anyways. Fuck was I just talking about? Why don't you help? But like you got me curious there. It's not just that you said something off topic. It's just like that interests me. But George, King fucking George, yes. I had, in my memory, backtracked all the way back to pre-programmed responses, and was going to try to continue from there. The King George thing. Okay, as near as I can tell it, like I'm having some sort of like lucidity right now. And I really don't understand it fully, but I'm going to try to put it into words for you. Was it the Green Horde or the Blue Horde that Jacques de Molay was allegedly a general in? At the same time as Jacques de Molay, the Templar, was killed in France. There was supposedly a Jacques de Molay who was a general of the Horde. And I think this is the key to this vision that I just saw of, I think, a time that I previously documented this. Basically, Georgia, Pennsylvania, large parts of this country were settled by, like, Slavic refugees that were given passage. And King George's installation, politically, was backed by the people who they were running from. Russians. Like, old, real Russians. Proper royal Russians. Kievan Rus Russians. From actual Georgia to go to Georgia, and from Slovenia to go to Pennsylvania. I think it's still true that Pennsylvania might have started as a penal colony. But just like with many rebellions and many civil wars, there's been a significant amount of occurrences that I think I can sense almost that somebody knows about still, that relate to this like an uprising. Like what's redeemable about the Russians as a people, and the reason why I try to emphasize that I'm not, somehow racist or culturally abjective of Russians. Another redeeming feature of them, other than the fact that they used to be the front lines of our defense in Europe, is this, something about this vision is telling me, okay, that it was the Pennsylvanians who started part of this rebellion against King George. I almost want to look up and see if there was some kind of Pennsylvania uprising in the late 1700s. Huh. I found something, for sure. But it's the opposite of the impression that I had. I'm willing to admit I was wrong, though. The Whiskey Rebellion? William Penn. Oh, that's interesting. William Penn. It's nothing to do with the penitentiary. It's supposed to be the guy named Penn, I remember. I remember thinking that was bullshit. So during the presidency of George Washington in 1791, whiskey distillers and farmers in Pennsylvania rebelled against the tax that had been levied against whiskey in particular. Interesting. So, I'm just going to go to the history of Pennsylvania itself right quick. Because, let's just say, what a coincidence that right after our country was founded, there was immediately a rebellion in the place with Slovenia in its state territory name. The history of Pennsylvania begins in 1681 when William Penn received a royal charter from King Charles II of England. No memory of him. Human activity proceeds in that region precedes this date. Iroquois, Shawnee, Erie, and Shoshonak Indians. Most of those tribes were reduced to remnants as a result of smallpox before any permanent colonist arrived. Pennsylvania was colonized by Swedish and Dutch settlers in the 17th century before the English took control of the colony in 1667. Not 1666. 1667. Okay. So, it was settled by Quakers, along with its chief city of Philadelphia, which was the first planned city in the mid-18th century. First planned city. In Pennsylvania? Because it ain't the first planned city, period. Morons. Fucking New Orleans precedes that. Come on. In the mid-18th century, the colony attracted many German and Scotch-Irish. So we've got Dutch, Swedish, Scotch-Irish, in this state called Pennsylvania. Must be just some kind of coincidence. I mean, I didn't expect to see, like pre-Columbian. Oh, it's going to be all about the poor Indians that died because of smallpox. Because, we immediately sent a bunch of fucking forensic scientists there to determine their cause of death and everything, right? As someone who was mentored by the chief of the Choctaw, Greyhawk himself, the guy who taught me about licorice root. Let me just say, the red man should be very cautious about having his own history handed to him by the white man. Even if it makes you look like a victim, even if it makes you feel prideful, even if it makes you get sympathy from other people, even if it helps you get casino licenses, be very cautious of limiting yourself to any certain perspective on history. I gotta blow my nose. Good God, where's all this shit come from? From scratch. No, that's still not the case, though. New Orleans was planned by the Spanish from nothing. It was a fucking bank on the river. It was planned by the Spanish in, I think, 1561 or something like. Sorry. Always known there was something about New Orleans. I just thought of something that made sense of it, and for why I have a reincarnated memory there. At least I used to think I did. Not sure whether that's still valid, but that was something before my reawakening that I thought if I was reincarnated, that might be a possible tie to the meaning of the word Nothen. And it was a memory of being stabbed in the fucking stomach. But I thought that that was an amalgamized memory, because it mirrored an incident that happened in Houston. But the knife didn't reach me. And I thought that that wound in my side had something to do with the name Nothen, and I thought it had something to do with downtown New Orleans. But as far as what I painted as the memory, and trying to understand it before, I knew it was amalgamized. And let me just say that before I elaborate too much on it. It was me in a form not unlike Cyrano de Bergerac. Cloak and hat and everything. And a short Spaniard with facial hair. Not you, Carlos. Not was on some steps against a building inlet in one of those little wall openings where the windows are, but like the shadow from the street lamps kind of hit him. He wasn't entirely inconspicuous, but... And that's where I amalgamize it. From there is I just cut it short by thinking that he had stabbed me. But that's the amalgamization. So I don't know from there what happened. Now, New Orleans, that I learned in history class, was a city that was planned by the Spanish as being like a planned out. Like, we're gonna build a fucking city here. We're gonna design it ahead of time. We're gonna put it in the crescent part of the river to reduce flooding or something like that. There was like reasoning behind everything that they did, and there was a ridge right there, and then but like the entire city was designed road by road. All of what's now called the French Quarter in New Orleans, okay, was actually designed by the Spanish. That's why it's called the French Quarter. What? Origins of the city of New Orleans. Internet search for the origins of the city of New Orleans. All right. I fucking hate Wikipedia. You know, before there was Wikipedia, you used to get prioritization of .edu sources. Now, which do you prefer? Colleges providing, like, professional level information the same way they provide information to, like, governments, right? Or just one fucking website able to have a monopoly on the definition of everything. Nobody fucking sees that as a problem. Nobody knows who fucking edits this shit. Nobody knows who puts this information up there. It's a completely unaccountable system that's also a monopoly. This bullshit says it's founded by the French, then Spanish, then back to French. Okay. Bienville. Bienville was French. Okay. Jean-Baptiste Le Moyne de Bienville. Okay. I was just mistaken about what I learned in history class earlier. Because I thought Bienville was Spanish. But okay. $17.18. I could have sworn it was older than that, though. Huh. Bienville. I just want to compare. Okay, so 1701 to 1743. Younger brother of Pierre Le Moyne de Iberville. Huh. So Iberville and Bienville were French, huh? You know I made an A in that class, but for some reason I thought they were Spanish. I thought Iberville was... Oh, I thought they were both Spanish. But they, yeah, sound pretty French, I guess. They sound kind of both-ish. Sound almost like some kind of mixture. Maybe based on some preceding language. Wait. Jacques de Molay. Okay. Clearly not meant to be in any way similar by the artistry, and we certainly have a time discrepancy because I really thought it was like the very late 1500s that New Orleans was first. Like the whole Iberville and Bienville thing happened right after Christopher Columbus, when they charted the fucking Mississippi River, the Spanish. maybe I'm misplacing something that I remember and trying to overwrite the history that I learned in this lifetime onto it. Oh, God damn it. Get this stupid ad off of here. Oh, God. Just hate ads. So, during the same time, there was a mule, possibly bule. Bule. Okay. For the Franks, was a general under the Mongol ruler Ghazan near the end of the 13th century. Mule was part of the 1299 to 1300 Mongol offensive in Syria and Palestine. And remained with a small force to occupy the land after the departure of Ghazan. Are we back to John of Damascus? Huh. 1,000 years ago? Seems about right. He also participated in the last Mongol offensive in the Levant in 1303. His name has caused confusion for some historians because of his similarity with that of the contemporary Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay. Biography. Little is known about the Mongol general except for these battles that he was in. In 1303, Generals Mule and Kutluk-Sa reappeared in great strength in Syria, about 80,000 together with the Armenians, defeated at Hama on March 30th, 1303, also known as the decisive Battle of Shachab, south of Damascus, on April 21st, 1303. It is considered to be the last major Mongol invasion of Syria. They were defeated at Hama. Battle of Shachab. Who's the belligerents here? Malmuk. The Malmuk defeated the Mongols? That's... Mongols, incorporating troops from vassal countries such as Armenia and Georgia, sacked Baghdad in 1258. Took Aleppo and Damascus in 1260. Experienced their first major defeat at the Battle of Ain Jalut, which eventually forced the Mongols out of Damascus and Aleppo and back across the Euphrates. So a battle south of the Sea of Galilee. A place now called Ain Jalut. That was Arabic. Oh, I should have known. Sicilian Armenia. What? Mamluk Sultanate versus the Sicilian Armenia. Oh, and then came the Ottomans. Okay. So, after, I just want to say this the way I just learned it just now. And I'm going to make a statement based upon the facts that I've learned. And we're going to decide whether or not it sounds like bullshit. This territory here, that's the Mamluk. Now, after the Horde got control of, what was it? Baghdad, Damascus, and what else was it? Oh, and Aleppo. They defeated the Horde, which was apparently backed by Georgian and Armenian troops, Russians. So they defeated the Russians, supposedly, allegedly. How much evidence do you think of all that there is? Like, how much evidence do you think there actually is of that happening? This place, basically Egypt and Palestine, decimated over and over again, was able to, much like, Moscow, miraculously drive out the Horde. It's not like it was happening at the same time. It's not like Kievan Rus was rising up and these people were rising up. No, these things are centuries separated. But anyways, I think we've got sidetracked enough here. I don't even remember how we originally got onto this. But, I've always felt like if New Orleans wasn't an older city than America, there is some city around here that's older. And apparently they had found some sort of pyramid in Louisiana, up by Natchitoches. Pyramid found in Natchitoches, Louisiana. Siri, you know how to spell Natchitoches? Oh, you're my girl, Siri. Siri knows how to spell Natchitoches. Now, I just want to show you this, in case it can show up here. No, wait, that's going to be backwards. I'm going to type it out in the comments. I'm going to show you how to spell what we in Louisiana pronounce Natchitoches. I'm going to try to type it without looking. I got it right so far, even though I looked and verified, but I got it. The Cheeto Chiz. That spells Natchitoches. Internet search for pyramids found in Natchitoches, Louisiana. Caddo Indians of Louisiana. I don't want to get more sidetracked than we already are. Never mind. But they'd found some kind of weird shit up there south in Natchitoches. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different evidence that backs up my overall claim that the Americas were settled in secret as people were fleeing from the horde. And I think most likely Georgia and Pennsylvania were settled by Slovenians and Georgians. You know? I mean, going from the name King George to calling a land Georgia is kind of a stretch. You know, we have New York, it's named after a place. We have Virginia. It's named for its, you know, kind of its description, because there were no people there, and because it was never farmed before, you know. Florida? I have no idea why they named Florida. Carolina, North and South Carolina. That probably comes from a name, but even old New York was once New Amsterdam. In Maine, New Hampshire, places. But then you have Georgia, Pennsylvania. Carolina, Georgia. Sound like, one name could lead to another. The Carolina territories were founded afterwards, though. So, may have been named in a way that would blend the other ones together. Not necessarily a cover-up, but more of a placation, You're right, some guy's wife, right? But then we're all probably brainwashed into thinking that because Sweet Caroline, ba ba ba, we think of Caroline, we think of Sweet Caroline. You can't really fucking separate the two if you've heard that song. Anyways. But let's get back onto the subject of the modern era, shall we? Let's get back onto the deception of recent times and talk about why this channel was created other than to try to at least, I don't, when it comes to decoding the ancient past and when it comes to decoding and actually narrowing down and making like a canonized new version of history. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to set anything in stone just because I fucking say it one time in a random thought, alright? I'm trying to promote the research into these subjects that will achieve these canonizable documents and studies by the principle of probable cause. Okay, in order to investigate, you need to establish probable cause, right? Well, if you can establish that somebody's been lying to you about a subject and they are involved in some other way with that subject, then there's probable cause for that investigation, right? Well, if I can point out in history that people have been lying and that there's some motivation, seemingly, for those lies, then we have probable cause to investigate and try to decipher and take away the skewed perspective of that person's or this group's motivations and see how history really unfolded without that skewing of the perspective. Now recently, we've all had our perspectives skewed here on the internet. We've had it skewed in ways that make us distrust our own governments, that make us distrust Western institutions, such as international governing and regulatory or oversight type bodies like the World Trade Court, the United Nations. We've been propagandized against these things and pre-programmed to respond to the defense of these things with rage and turmoil, and to enter into loophole arguments with people who are proponents of this. And eventually what was sort of an outskirts conspiracy theory type mentality began to take hold in mainstream America. And now we have the fucking conspiracy theorist president, okay? And what I've been trying to do since the beginning of this channel and the previous channel known as Lost-Begotten, now known as Easy Reefers. Damn it, hold on. Is try to see what of these alternative understandings, what of this this perception and reading between the lines that we've all been led to believe that we've collectively achieved, right? What is it? What is its motivation? What is its purpose? Is there a consistent theme behind it? Does it accuse one group consistently while protecting another group consistently, or failing to mention any of the ills of another group consistently? You know, kind of like how Fox News criticizes Republicans half-heartedly at best, you know, if they ever do it all. It's mainly just focused on Democrats, just all about how Democrats are fucking just Democrats, man. Well, the internet is Russia's Fox News. And by the internet, I mean Google, YouTube, in particular, YouTube. All these fake news sites like Breitbart, InfoWars, all of these things that have been involved with the alliance between the Russians and the Confederacy, and things that people don't really realize have been involved with the Russians and the Confederacy, like Facebook and Twitter. One second, please. Now the thing is, for years, on these platforms, the average consumer, if interested in any sort of political or otherwise sort of, you know, like deep looks into things, just investigative journalism, that kind of thing, religion even, conspiracy, ufology, many different subjects that YouTube is the most popular platform for, are skewed in a coordinated effort to the defense of Russia. And not just the defense of Russia, but they partake in the offensive tactics, talking points issued by the Kremlin, strategies of social media dominance, not just talking points, the entire agenda of the story that they cover, the entire agenda of the subject matter that is their channel theme, is meant to do both offense and defense for the Russian Federation. They, while on the one hand provide basically alternative theories and constant levels of mistrust to anything that, you know, a Western government accuses Russians or anybody else of doing, they at the same time promote these conspiracy theories that directly frame Western institutions or Western individuals for being behind either things that didn't happen the way they said they were, or just completely fictional events to begin with. So they turned a blind eye for Russia, and at the same time they're pointing the fingers, the same way Russia wants everybody to point the fingers, with word-for-word talking points that can be found on fucking Pravda.ru. And since the invasion of Ukraine, I became really active in trying to spread the awareness needed for our country, our journalists, our politicians, our preachers, and whatever actual American YouTubers, or if there are any actual patriotic American YouTube employees. What these people need to realize, so that we can see the redcoats are coming. The redcoats are coming. YouTube would rather play offense and defense for Russia. See, not only have they promoted these channels that cover lots of different things, but then go and play defense for Russia, like the Next News Now or whatever, and Real News, and blah, blah, blah. And then they go and they accuse all of Russia's enemies of horrible things. But on top of that, YouTube in particular has gone out of their way to make sure that as few people as possible are allowed to watch my broadcasts. Now, I suppose one needs to establish, before they would investigate, a reason for Kremlin intelligence's interest in YouTube, and why they would want to infiltrate their way into dominance of this platform, and why they would feel it to be a national security priority of the Russian Federation to be able to control my free speech. And people like me, if there's anybody like me in any way on these matters, to be able to control their free speech and keep them from warning the public. What motivation could Russia possibly have for that? What events transpired that gave them the inclination to do so? One word, if you'd call it that. MH370. You see, while the Russians were invading Ukraine, they were filmed on Facebook and on YouTube. And that's why it's, Facebook and YouTube are the big parts of this. They were filmed on Facebook and YouTube. This was posted in real time, moving a Buk missile launcher over into the Ukrainian territories where they were invading and just blowing shit up and sacking towns, right? And then the MH370 shooting down happened. The downing of MH370 happened. And then people filmed and posted on YouTube and Facebook another video of that same, with the serialized numbers and everything, that same Buk missile launcher, minus one of the missiles, crossing back over this border back into Russia. Now that's just a microcosm. That's just one of the many instances in which Russia found that Ukrainians in Ukraine and Americans and Ukrainians in Canada and people in Germany and in Europe and Ireland and Spain and Australia and lots of different places were concerned that Russia was fucking invading Europe. And they were trying to get together and advocate and collect evidence and investigate and figure out, whoa, what the fuck's going on here? Little green men, my ass. Now, did YouTube side with democracy? Did YouTube decide to help these people who were trying to defend Europe from military fuck invasion? Did Facebook decide to help these people who are trying to stand up for Western and American values, trying to stand up for the moral obligation that we Americans have according to a treaty that we signed guaranteeing Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity if they gave up their nukes to Russia? They gave up their nukes to Russia. We signed the treaty. We promised to fucking protect them. And we failed because of, and only because of, YouTube and Facebook turning a blind eye while pointing the finger. And this is very important, and shadow banning people like me for saying the fucking truth. The truth is, the reason why Hillary Clinton was being attacked is because she was the embodiment of America's interests. Everything she did around the entire world, no matter how corrupt you might fucking be led to think that it was done in order to protect you. Was done in order to protect freedom for everyone. Was done with objectivity and compassion in mind. And frankly, fucking former politicians get paid lots of money to speak. That's not news. For people to sit there and go, oh, she got a fucking $500,000 for this speech and that speech. No, actually, the Clinton Foundation did. Oh, yeah, she gets paid this shit and then she donates it to charity. Actually, she has them pay the charities directly. The Clintons don't receive salaries or commission or anything off the fucking Clinton Foundation. They live off of private investments. Mostly real estate and equity holdings. Yeah. Did you know that? Did you know that they don't need to be corrupt to have like a decent fucking retirement? You know, President and Secretary of State is a pretty nice fucking retirement as it is. But oh, the Clintons are bad because why? They fucking went to help fight AIDS in Africa? Help starving children in India? Help set up educational centers that aren't madrasas in the Philippines? Oh, shame on them. If only Barack Obama would have went to a Clinton school instead of a madrasa when he was in the Philippines. Maybe you'd not think he was a Muslim. Because they're rich and they're not Republicans, they must be corrupt, right? Even though, well, what we've learned is that it's the Republicans. It's the fucking Republicans. No. You're not going to tell me someone who goes to college for 12 years, becomes a lawyer, and then continues advancing their way through vast amounts of knowledge. Just vast amounts of knowledge and skill and meticulousness in the legal profession. Okay. You're not going to tell me that they should make a set amount above what somebody flipping burgers should make. Okay? the fact of the matter is minimum wage is set not because flipping burgers is easy, but because those people don't fucking show up to work on time. Those people don't work consistently. They have poor ethics. They tend to steal from their employers. And there's a high turnover rate. Not only is the skill required very low, but the bar set is lower than that. Okay? Now, when it comes to these jobs that you have to go to 12 years or 8 years at least of college for, it's not only a matter of those jobs require much more skill, those require a larger investment in education, those require more competency. They require you to take your work home with you. They require you to spend less time with your family. They require you to study constantly while you're quote-unquote off the clock. You should be making 3 to 5 times more than a burger flipper, an IT guy, Carlos. You should be making 3 to 5 times more. I don't want to put like a small cap at all on what a politician should make. As far as executive politicians, the argument is that you want to pay them more, first of all, to get their skill. Okay, you don't want people to feel like they're undercompensated for the amount of time and investment they put in or for their level of competency. Okay, but actually, when the people pay their politicians more, theoretically, they should be less prone to corruption. You don't want your politicians going hungry, because then they'll, go looking for bribes. That being said, the solution needs to be that if you want to hold a public office, all your expenses become public. Everything you've done for at least the past 10 years, depending on the level of the office. For something like president, try 20 years. Try your whole life, in fact. I mean, it shouldn't be necessarily made public, but you should be required to account for everything you've ever fucking done, at least in a classified setting. Oh yeah, hookers and blow, nothing from Russians. As long as it was all hookers and blow, that's fine. Oh. But yeah, I mean, politicians get in trouble in this country all the time for doing travel that's not related to their job and charging taxpayers for it. Local politicians especially, you probably don't hear about that on the international news, but that's like one of the things why I believe in this country, okay, is because we see it all the fucking time. Even here in Louisiana, there's been like fucking 8 different guys arrested in the past 10 years for like going places they're not supposed to on the government's dime. And there was one guy who had like the money stashed in his freezer, but that was just more specialness than I really knew how to comprehend. I think it was bribes from Cox Communications. But the key to preventing corruption, okay, it's not playing with their pay. A politician should be paid based on their education and experience. In fact, everybody, when you put a job ad out, okay, you should be willing to hire people who have potential, but you shouldn't have to pay them as much as somebody who has education, training, and experience. Okay? Like Donald Trump. He should not be getting as much presidential salary because he does not have the education, training, and experience. And it turns out we were mistaken about his potential. Well, I wasn't, but, allegedly people were, like those Russians that were at the inauguration. But the key to keeping political corruption from even fucking being possible is a public employee, a public official, needs to be just that. They need to be public people. And you should not be willing to seek power unless you seek an end to your privacy. How do you think that would do as far as keeping people like Donald Trump from seeking power? And your average little corrupt local fuck. The medical system is still satanic? I don't know if I agree with that. There are failures to acknowledge the power of spirituality that exists in medicine. But certainly, the practice of setting up hospitals being founded by yours truly and providing aid to people, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Medical insurers, however, I'm pretty sure the meetings at medical insurance companies involve black cloaks and fucking flaming pentagrams. Like, I'm pretty sure that's how their board meetings happen. They're like, oh, no, full, gosh, like, whatever I don't know. I think I was channeling that weird guy from that one Babylon 5 episode, the Kiso Richo, whatever. Man, it has been too long since I've watched Babylon 5. But yes, medical insurance companies, their board meetings. You think that's where all the unborn children go? Like, they just like an incense pile of fetuses, and they got to do some weird satanic shit there. Like what does one have to be to? What does one have to do to become an insurance executive? Do you have to watch and applaud as Satan skull fucks your mother? Like, what's required? Oh, look, he's got her nostril. Oh, like, too graphic? Sorry. Ultrasound demaces the brain. I suppose they're more demanding in some European countries than they really are in America. In America, you can, as long as you arrange it properly, you can give birth in your fucking home. You can give birth in a hotel room if you want to, You don't have to have ultrasound, except for a couple of different ones. As far as your checkups go. But you, again, don't even have to do that. There are religious waivers for just about everything concerning childbirth in this country. But anyways, let's get back to the Hillary thing, shall we? Because, like, you know, I don't know if I even mentioned this much, but there was a time when I fucking hated Hillary Clinton, too. Like, you know, I didn't like to talk about it a lot because it was, you know, I'm trying to fucking get the woman elected president, but there was I guess I should have mentioned it more, huh? I didn't really think about it much. Like, it didn't like occur to me, you know? I didn't like make a conscious decision not to talk about it. I think I talked about it one time. And it just mostly slipped my mind. But the time that I fucking couldn't stand Hillary Clinton should be obvious. It was when she was running against Barry. When she was running against Obama. That's when Hillary pissed me off. And, it turns out some of the things that I was having a hard time understanding some of those things were the result of the fuckery. That is to say, there would be like these allegedly leaked emails that weren't actually leaked emails. Talking about how, like, there was this one, like, really racist kind of strategy that they were fucking allegedly discussing. I forgot exactly what it was and how it was racist, but the overall impression was that it was fucking racist. And they were just gonna, like, not mind how racist it was just to try to make Obama look bad, right? And I remember at the time that pissing me off. But then more recently, I had learned that that was fucking third-party influence. Circumcision is something that's been done since ancient times and is a Gaelic tradition. It's a Hebrew tradition. And it is medically sound. I repeat, circumcision is medically sound. There are several different bacterial infections that uncircumcised people can suffer from, as well as an enhanced ability to rape women. That's right, uncircumcised men have an enhanced ability to rape women because they can pre-lubricate. Okay, not to be too graphic, but that's the reason why. Now, in addition to the fact that it is medically viable, socially viable to circumcise, it actually enhances male pleasure. It also enhances female pleasure, if you know what you're doing, of course. And turns out, medically, 8 days is the ideal, 8 to 10 days actually, is the ideal time frame in which to circumcise a child. So, 4,300 and, well, I can't really know, it'd be 400 and something years ago. When the Jews, when the Hebrews wrote down that the child should be circumcised after 8 days, they had been given advice from God that would be confirmed by medical science in the 20th century. Well, I think something went wrong with yours, man. Because that's not the general consensus. They must have bought you know, there are botched jobs for sure. But those are the facts. Are you speaking to me as if I haven't heard and considered this point of view before? Is removing the appendix, is that mutilating the torso? Is removing the tonsils mutilating the esophagus? Is removing the wisdom teeth mutilating the jaw? You see, I used to think maybe that removing the wisdom teeth was a bad thing. I'm like, I don't want to remove my wisdom teeth. It's got the word wisdom in it. What if there's some wisdom that I wind up missing because I got my wisdom teeth removed? Well, oh wait, those teeth are all there. Those aren't, because I didn't get my fucking wisdom teeth removed. I got one in the back that's all crunched together. I got this one just fucking fell apart. Because my wisdom teeth are impacted. Because I didn't get them taken out. Yeah, braces. Do braces mutilate the face? I got this fucking bitch-ass overlap here and here. All right here. Yeah, all right here. Before my teeth got all fucked up, yes, I did have basically vampire teeth. But, told you I was part dragon, you know. Okay, no need to be dramatic, both of y'all. Okay, but don't mistake the overall practice for medical malpractice. Okay, if there's something wrong with what happened to you, man, I'm very sorry, and some moron needs to be held to account. Also, you might consider that lack of sensitivity, while we're on this subject for reasons I have no idea, but lack of sensitivity might also due to neurological stress or blood pressure or blood sugar problems. Did you know that? If you have low blood pressure or low blood sugar, you can have those same problems. Same thing with if it's too high. Well, the sugar, not the pressure. And extensive periods of having blood sugar that's too high can lead to massive nervous die-off, and so that can lead to like things like strokes and shit. So. But I'm not a doctor. I just, designed and built the first human body. But I'll admit, I winged it, like. That's a pun, because it was an angel. That sounds like a local problem, but that's Spain proper, right? Not a colony. I've had a bad aura about that place for a long time. How's Portugal? What do you hear about them? I'm interested to know what Portugal's like. Used to be a nice place. Again, Gaul. Madrid. I think the Argentinian and Venezuela's settlements are a lot like the Pennsylvania, Georgia, and the Americas, but the Russians, the Easterners, not like Russians, but the Easterners, Eastern Europeans that fled there came through Spain and went from Portugal to there. Really? It's too bad Portugal didn't, like, I don't know. I don't want to say hang on to a colony, but didn't find, like, some sort of a greater alliance with a colony, you know? And become a more influential, relevant power. Something like that. Pretty sure they're a NATO member, at least. I think my aunt used to go there when I was a kid. She brought me a pennant from there. That was when I first learned about the country Portugal. I don't know why she used to visit there. Maybe we have family there. More than likely, she's the aunt that visits all the, like, she's the one that knows everybody, you know. Like, that's your second cousin on your, you know, like, she knows. If I won the lottery, I would commission her to write a book about everything she knows about my family, just so I could, like, have a clue. Oh, I bet there are some beautiful reefs off that coast. Oh, that's right. UK still has Gibraltar. Right? Spain is part of an early lesson in strategy, still being perpetuated today. And I can remember teaching the child Mars this strategy. Okay. It's called turning over a farthing. A farthing referring to a piece of currency from a land that isn't bordered to your land. So you don't have any sort of exchange rate with it. It's just like a collectible coin, right? Does that make sense? That's what a farthing is. If anybody's got any modern definition for a farthing, please put it in the comments. But as far as what that goes, that's what, if you've ever seen farthing written in any ancient books, that's what my understanding of the definition is. That's my ancient-y self speaking. That's not Sean Morris speaking. But think of it in terms of this. You are in your land, and you have a bunch of neighboring enemies. What you need is a friend that they don't know is your friend. You need to turn over a farthing. That's what's happened to Spain. That's why the Russians are so interested in causing the communist and... I mean, it's basically what, communism versus unabashed capitalist corruption versus nationalism versus separatism. I mean, there's a... It's not a political molting pot. It's more of a political lava pit, isn't it, Carlos? And that's that turning over a farthing strategy. The same is like with Russia's newer attempt at trying to do the same thing to Mexico. And even Canada, you know? Now, to lesser extent, because Canada is filled with so many very nice people and very wise people, including Ukrainians who warned most of their country about what the fuck was happening. And Mexico, just being a very rich cultural place and being a very stubborn, prideful type of people, not as prone to the more subtle types of influence, they've had to go straight into mafia and cartels with Mexico. I mean, there's been limited attempts at political, movements this and that way, but it's very hard to non-indigenize those movements the way Russia likes to non-indigenize things like the Republican Party, for instance. And if, for instance, if America winds up being divided into two different versions of Republicans, like the Trumpists start their new party, or like the real Republicans start a new party, and then the Libertarians grow, and then the Democrats get divided into the Socialists and the Democrats. On a local level, the two-party system in this country, on a local level, serves to keep people in check more, as opposed to having different balancing acts going on between different individual minor party players, which in their entirety and as individuals, either way, cannot stand up against things like organized crime and the agendas of foreign powers, okay, or even corporate espionage. The two-party system allows for a wider power base to be grasped by both parties. Now, what's gone wrong in this country is that the two-party system has succumbed to corruption because our society and our family has succumbed to corruption. Okay? The strength of the two-party system has wound up becoming sort of our weakness. Okay? Because we got our fundamentals fucked up. Once you start succumbing to divide and conquer on a sociological level, then it becomes a socioeconomical level, and then it becomes a sociopolitical level. And that's where we're at today. We've gone from this crisis of, do we teach evolution in schools or not? To, do we allow prayer in schools or not? To, who do we pray for? What do we pray for? What the fuck are we doing? That's about where we are. I think the best thing that Spain could do is the same thing that America needs to do, but on a much more bold level, okay? The same way we need to have a centrist revival in this country and have the commonality of the true Republicans and the true Democrats just agree to reset our political system in a more adult way by recognizing the dangers of foreign influence on both sides and really discussing how they've affected us historically. Lots of countries need that to happen. And in countries like Spain, not just Spain in particular, where there are these numerous different political parties, right? I'm pretty sure that's how Spain is. And you form these alliance governments, coalitions, right? The parties that want to do this historical revival, that want to recognize the detriments of the foreign influence that has been perpetuated over the past 50 plus years, need to get together and actually study themselves, study each other, and try to work out their differences based upon that new understanding, trying to empty their cup that they've had filled and that they're just, throwing in each other's faces at the moment, and realize, okay, wait, we've been made to see further apart on these issues because we've been influenced. And if we simply reflect on these mistakes that we've made in the past, we may not agree on the fundamentals here, but we can at least agree to work together again, like we used to, like we should. And the political parties that have, just the best interest of the country at heart, but want to team up to defend it against the other parties that are willing to acquiesce to foreign influence and become, loudspeakers for anti-Western propaganda, basically. Once they form these political alliances, it's either going to work or they're all going to get killed, And in the cases where they're all going to get killed, all I can say is I hope they made their issues public enough so that their cause becomes more powerful than their lives. You know, it's like this. A martyr never wants to be a martyr. But if their message can't get out while they're alive, because they're alive, and it happens to get out because they died while they're dead, do you think they're sad about it? Yeah. The European Union, as I've said for a long time now, it wasn't a bad idea from the beginning. It isn't a bad idea now. It doesn't do nothing but horrible shit. It's done some good things. If you knew what the world would be like without the European Union at this point, then and only then can you make that comparison. But, notwithstanding, the EU has potential. That potential is being stifled the same way Spain's local potential is being stifled, the same way America's potential is being stifled, the same way Ireland's potential is being stifled. Because as soon as they fucking know about you, as soon as they know what you're capable of, as soon as they know your potential, you know, like the potential of this channel is similar to the potential of the EU. The tactics against this channel are similar to the tactics against the EU. Think about my multiple named trolls. You know, the guys that come here with different names. How many EU representatives do you think has Russia had an influence with? How many motions put forward has Russia drafted? How many policies of the EU are policies of the EU basically because they're okay with Russia? They might have worked pretty hard to convince them of certain things being a good idea. Was anybody on guard? Was anybody on watch? Was anybody looking out for this kind of thing happening back during the time frame when it would have happened? No. We can only basically guess in retrospect and see when somebody acts self-destructively, they're under demonic influence. When a country acts self-destructively or acts against its own citizens, they're under horde influence. So when a national or an international, multinational alliance like the EU, or say the East India Trading Company, acts against its own self-interest, acts against the interest of its own people, somewhere at the top, towards the top more than likely, there's been foreign fucking corruption from the enemies of that institution, nation, country, or people. And that's all part of it too. But you know, whether or not you're a neo-Nazi or just a reasonable person, you know, we're not allowed to talk about that either, Carlos. You know, Islamophobia to me is like arachnophobia. It's like, I know not all spiders bite. I know lots of spiders perform very good services to society and shit. But I don't want to get caught in their fucking web. I don't want... I don't, you know... don't particularly want one unless I'm sure it's not going to bite in my house, you know? It's exactly the case. If I'm sure it's not going to bite, I'll let it in my house. If I'm not sure it's not going to bite, chances are, just like a lot of different species, a lot of different strangers, I'm not going to let you in my fucking house. Because I've heard a lot about different people being bitten by spiders. And it's pretty bad. You know, it's like comparing spiders to bunny rabbits is the way I see comparing Muslims to Christians. Theoretically, someone may have been bitten to death. There are probably instances of people dying of like Lyme disease and rabies and shit. People have died from being bitten by rabbits. But when it all comes down to it, they're supposed to be cute little fuzzy fucking bunnies. Okay? Every now and again you find a fucking rabid Christian or a Christian spreading Lyme disease. Okay? And he's responsible for a lot of fucked up shit. But he's supposed to be a cute little fuzzy fucking bunny. Because Christians are supposed to protect the weak, uphold the truth, heal the sick, pray for their enemies, love those that hate them, etc. Supposed to be cute little fucking bunnies. Okay? Spider's supposed to be a fucking spider. It's supposed to eat insects, but occasionally they eat fucking hummingbirds. And you know, them spiders in Iraq, they might occasionally eat a fucking bunny, won't they? Them camel spiders? Holy shit. They're supposed to just eat bugs. I suppose a long time ago, maybe that's all they ate. I have to believe that everybody, you know? I have to believe that everybody, and I know you've been confused about this before, so I want to say this to you to be clear. I have to believe that everybody has the potential for redemption in them. And I know for a fact that the reason why the word muse is in the root of their self-ascription is because of the foundation, the area, the former culture of it, basically, was based upon, I don't want to call it muse worship, but that's a simplified way of putting it, is muse worship. I think it'd be a very interesting thing to try to look for hints of that in the oldest versions of the Quran. Interesting, not necessarily promising. I don't know. It's not that old of a book, you know. It's kind of introduced right at the beginning of the era of bullshit and slaughter, you know. It's like, hey, we just wrote this book. Oh, look, the world's covered in blood. Yay! That went well. Sorry, but that's the fucking facts. the way I feel about it is the way you should feel about the world being covered in blood. The facts aren't my fault, but YouTube wants to fucking, you know. On the one hand, they drive us all crazy getting us thinking about them. Look at this massive fucking invasion happening in Europe and shit. On the other hand, most of the big prosperous channels weren't telling you about how many of them came through on trains through Russia. Straight into fucking Germany on a train. Through Russia. And now that their objective's complete, because, like I said, they're doing the Dune playbook. This is the fucking Baron Harkonnen run. Okay. First, you have the big, fat, belligerent asshole son, and then you're gonna have the young, pretty, liberal, populist son. Right? Well, once they got Trump in, it stopped being just me they went after, right? They started going after anyone who talked about that part of the horde. Now, you know the reason why I say the horde is because we don't like to say the M word or the I word or whatever, or salami or bologna or whatever. But, you know, like I still have to this day friends that I knew from high school who are Muslims. They are not a party to all this shit, and they're not a party to any of the shit that we're afraid of. But at the same time, it's painful how naive they are. You know, like I got a friend who quoted Muhammad to criticize Trump, and I'm just like, they're so similar. Oh. You know, talk about saying one thing and doing the other. You know, like... In Roman times, when you had the military governments, you would have sort of a unification of political ideology that went with those, and that's why they were supported. If a military leader didn't have a noble cause, nobody'd fight for him. We weren't mercenaries. We were warrior poets. We fought for what we believed in. We fought for our land. We fought for our children. We fought for our retirement, which was more land, so we could have more children. I remember Thrace. A beautiful woman waited for me there once. I died before I met her. Well, before I was reunited with her. But we said, even if we don't win, we still have our land in Thrace. And it was an odd time to have land in Thrace, as many Roman soldiers did, and the Senate would use our holdings, kind of like Hillary Clinton's holdings, the Clinton family's holdings in Russia. You know, a lot of people have different stocks in Russia and different China and different shit. Trump, fucking Republican, everybody. Because we thought the Cold War was over, right? Well, at this time, many mighty men, like known heroes, senators, former consuls, proconsuls, had land in Thrace. And Thrace, this portion of Thrace that I'm picturing, had already been basically surrounded by the barbarians. And there was, where is it though? An area leading to a mountain pass into the end of one river that were basically occupied by former Roman soldiers and their families. Okay. And from the river to the south to the Roman border, basically, and from the river to the north onward was all barbarian. But there was like an uneasy peace. But in retrospect, I mean, they obviously just played us against each other, right? Because they would say that you're not our enemies, you're honorable men, you're warriors, we honor your service to your countries as we would want our retired veterans to be, and they passed us over. They did it, obviously, for a fucking political purpose. The same way they used that against us, used our service against us, while trying to frame the people that they said they were after, helping them frame themselves as populists. So I wonder if behind the scenes they were saying that they had compromised us. Wow. Plans within plans within plans. Yes. Yes. And I think every Celtic person knows how to recognize the eyes of a fellow warrior poet. There's a difference between that and the 1,000-yard stare, you know. 1,000-yard stare is someone who's broken by battle because they did not believe in the cause. The eyes of the warrior poet are someone who is proud of every fucking last life they took. And if they weren't to be proud of taking that life, they wouldn't have taken it. So they have no regrets. In the time when a warrior poet developed the 1,000-yard stare is when they accidentally killed a bunch of people that didn't deserve to die. But those are references to an ancient culture, and that was a long time ago, and the Lost-Begotten does not condone physical violence of any form. Because I have all the magical power necessary to perform any violence necessary. And by I mean God. Anyway. I just wouldn't want anyone to ever think that I suggested they so much as throw a freaking pebble at Trump, you know? No. As I've said, even though the emotional, like the Sean side of me, okay? We'll talk about my duality. Let's talk about my duality. The Sean side of me just wants Donald Trump to be like the revival of that Ripley's Believe It or Not episode with the spontaneous human combustion. Only I want it to happen during a speech, not while he sleeps. Just like for every molecule, just to burst and just erupt into flames. Like it's just like his face just bloody and pulsating and boiling and just the gruesomest sci-fi horror shit you could possibly imagine. Yeah, that's what the Sean side of me wants. But the ascended side of me understands. Is that graphic enough for you? When I reflect, when I think wisely and maturely, right? When my greater self is my influence, I understand that he's where he is for a reason. Very specific reason. I've stated that reason numerous times. I've stated that reason all along, and I've stated this fact as well. That he needs to be where he is, doing what he's doing, thinking he's won, thinking he's getting away with it. In order for the maximum harvest. Not just in terms of the number of people arrested, but the number of lessons that can be learned from all of this. And back to that lesson. And before I get sidetracked again, I'll try to summarize this as concisely as possible. Russia hated Hillary Clinton because Hillary Clinton was the best person to represent our interest. She was someone who has admitted she was wrong. She is someone who has made mistakes in her past and grown from them and learned from them and become that logical type of person who objectively analyzes facts. And she has demonstrated her ability to reflect and think differently on things over and over again. That's someone who has admitted they were wrong, and as I have stated earlier, someone who's capable of true analysis, of objective, rational thought. On the other side, we have had different politicians who've been influenced by political extremities and ideological extremities. But, you know, in retrospect, Hillary Clinton didn't deserve any of the shame that I put on her. And, well, I still think my support for Barack Obama that eventually came was completely justified. But one could even make the case that Hillary Clinton would have been a better president in Republicans' eyes if they were objective. I know this is a stretch logically, so fucking please bear with me. If Republicans were objective, they would have thought that a Hillary Clinton presidency, if she had won in the primary against Obama in the beginning, was better than an Obama presidency. Because the reset button, the whole apologetics tour in general, it wasn't fucking her idea, was it? That was Obama's. And if I could make any criticism about Obama as far as how ideologically influenced he was, it's the same criticism I need to make of myself of that time. Because of the Bush years, we had become too apologetic for America's ideals. Not just for America's diplomacy and America's, you know, foreign policy blunders, but we came to the point of really almost apologizing for our way of life, it seemed. And that was a mistake. We needed a course correction, and we had the proper course correction, but due to the way it was covered and perceived, it became more of a course correction than it needed to be. Now, while Hillary Clinton represented the same sort of liberalism that Obama did, only with a little bit more of a nationalistic pride, I don't think Hillary Clinton as president would have gone the reset button route. Okay? As Secretary of State, she was implementing her president's policies. It might have been her idea to do the reset button, but it was her idea while implementing, you know, it's kind of a nuanced thing, but it's the truth. Her idea to do the reset button was her idea on how to implement Obama's policy. The reset policy was Obama's, even if the button idea was Hillary's. But I think if Hillary, having you know, plenty of friends and experience with Russia and plenty of missions and different types of corporate seminars and different things that she's done in Russia, if the button was her idea, she would have been able to spell it properly. Okay? I don't know. But I think that's the immediate argument that would be made. The button was her idea. Well, the fucking policy was still the president's policy. And who was president? Barry. Barry the Bower. Barry the Bower. And I defended the bowing. You know, I said a little fucking humility didn't hurt. I was on the same page at the time. Because of the Bush years. Because of how much we fucked up the world. In our eyes, all by ourselves. Didn't know the Russians were leading us around to distract the world from what they were doing. Didn't know Russia was a threat at all. Obviously, neither did Hillary, neither did Barrett, until they started showing their true colors. After we tried, we made a genuine effort as a country. This period right there proves the evil nature of Vladimir Putin and everybody he works with. Everybody he works with. What America tried to do was not surrender its values or acquiesce to the world. We simply tried to say, you know, we have a right to defend ourselves, but there's a point that you can go too far in grieving over an attack on your country, and we crossed the line, and we needed to objectify our objective. We need to make our foreign policy more objective and more reasonable. We needed to hit the fucking reset button. We needed to say, okay, this is the chance, people. Like, we don't want to be the world dominating power. We just want the difference between right and wrong to be what rules the world. That's what the Obama years and the apologetics tour was about, and it was a time where the world needed to see that from us. And we were trying to show Russia that we wanted to include them in the world, and that we didn't have to go towards this shit that we're in now. We didn't have to go back in time. We didn't have to resurrect any kind of Cold War. We didn't have to even worry about it happening again. Let's all commit to working together, to regular meetings, to regular cooperation, to investing in each other's businesses and companies. That's fine. That helps promote peace. It really does. As long as it's regulated by things like the World Trade Organization. I wonder why Trump hates it so much. Anyways. But when Russia made its move over Georgia, and then, you know, had Chechen War 2.0, and then South Ossetia, and had, you know, basically, since Obama took office, right when we started saying let's all be nice, the Russians were like, we just don't want to be nice here. We're going to be nice, but we want this back. It's Georgia. It's where Putin's family's from. We you know. Look, he's cute. He sings, and he's not like the Russians you used to know. This lighter is not like the lighter I used to know. Oh, it's got one left in it. Bless you, little lighter. And you know, I wish at that point their intentions would have been a little more obvious. But I can't second guess anyone else's judgment, because I would have judged things the same way. Because we didn't really know. We didn't know much about that area to begin with. But the Obama administration did do well in establishing Georgia as an independent state and helping it defend itself from a complete annihilation by Russia. But only in a less effective way than they did for Ukraine. Actually, like, they did more, but it was less effective. Which I guess you can consider that, you know, proximity to Europe, you know, lack of interest. I don't. But a thing that Georgia and Ukraine have in common that most people don't realize is the reason why I was perfectly reasonable in expecting not to be the only one who was trying to support Ukraine when Russia started taking fucking land in Europe. I shouldn't have been the only one sounding the alarm. After 9/11, Georgia and Ukraine sent troops to fight and die alongside American soldiers. If I didn't do what I did, I could never call myself a man of honor. There would never be a mirror I wouldn't punch when I saw myself. They came to our aid. You know, whether it was in vain, whether it was misguided, is irrelevant. I don't see how anyone could join with this onslaught, this psychological attack against our country, this campaign of brainwashing that was set against our way of life, our ideals, and the basis of our commitments, our integrity, and dishonor themselves in such a way as to vote for president, the epitome of this assault against our country. Not only the historic corruption that we have suffered, which Trump fucking iconizes, you know, just, he is the icon for everything that is wrong with this fucking country as far as corporate fucking greed goes, you know. He is the capitalist pig of all pigs. We're gonna get behind him and all of these fucking talking heads, these propaganda sources that have for so long been playing defense for Russia But then say Trump is strong against Russia because he wants to arm Ukraine. And it puzzled me that the very people who were, helping divide this country and obstructing Obama's foreign policy in Syria, etc., were wanting to overtly arm Ukraine. Overtly is the key word. When that is exactly what Vladimir Putin was hoping we would do. He had, at present, during the summer of 2014, rallied his troops into a frenzy. And if American weaponry started showing up in Donbass, there would have been nothing he could do to hold them back. He knew it, and we knew it. And we knew that he had caused it to begin with. That's what his propaganda machine was doing. And that propaganda machine at the same time, after playing defense around MH370, saying NATO probably shot that plane down, those same people were saying the Republicans are the ones who want to arm Ukraine, and that's why. And then those same people, when Trump became the candidate, after a period had passed where these troops were no longer in this frenzy, after a stalemate had been drawn, after it became, let's face it, a little more politically appropriate to overtly arm Ukraine, then and only then, at that period, after, we're talking the fucking summer of 2016, 2 years later, the frenzy's passed. Ukraine's getting heavily defended. We've had overt NATO exercises in Ukraine. Okay? The drool, the lust for the occurrence is faded. Then in August 2016, Trump becomes a candidate and he takes arming Ukraine off the Republican platform. And, while the Democrats and people have made an issue of this and have been right to do so, as I've just said, it was a more nuanced thing that happened over a lot longer period of time, and one has to really look at how it played out historically and how that related to the facts on the ground. Because and maybe the two people who were just viewing and then left thought I was making, or mistook what I was saying for some sort of a non-backable or weak argument in some way. Again, (2015). Hither shalt thou come and no further. That's it. That's as far as they got. At that point, the diplomatic scene was needing to be changed. At that point, things were just getting different. So there we are, February 2015. There has been very little land gained since then. After it all stalemated, after the Lost-Begotten channel comes online and says they're coming to America instead. They're just going to skip over Europe. They're coming for us. They've got these divide and conquer campaigns that are happening politically in Europe, but they're coming for us. They're going to chop the head off the chicken and just let it run around till it dies. Did they keep invading Ukraine from there? Did they take the little places that they said they were going to take from there? No. They proceeded to launch their assault against our country. They got 100% committed to controlling our political election and deciding who would become the American president. Now, was Donald Trump or any of his associates aware of what was going on in Ukraine? Was Donald Trump or any of his campaign or any of his national security staff aware that by joining in with this anti-American propaganda, this assault against our country, by joining in with cyber terrorism, that is what would help them get elected? Was the point to get elected? Or was the point the assault? Did Donald Trump use the election? Use terrorism to get elected so that he could be elected? Or did he use the election so that he could be a terrorist? The question that you need to answer to determine which of those two things is true is, how has he governed? Has he become a reasonable governor? Has he moved toward the center and become presidential, as it were? Or has he continued to divide and antagonize this country and employ means of political and socioeconomic terrorism in every way he has the power to do so? In every way he can possibly get away with, even stretching what people think that someone should be able to get away with. Donald Trump is an enemy of the United States. He is a clear and present danger to Western civilization as a whole. And his enablers need to be rounded up and made examples of. And what made them falter, what skewed their perception and allowed them to turn themselves against our country, needs to be made known. We need to take a step back as a people and figure out how far back this deception goes. That happened in 2012. Paul Manafort, the guy to one day volunteer, ask for no salary, to be the Trump campaign chairman. He was involved in that. He was involved in anti-American, anti-democratic Russian propaganda meant to disrupt the best interest of the United States and our foreign policy. By spreading stories in the United States that a senior cabinet official, Hillary Clinton, who had been a prominent critic of President Yanukovych in his treatment of Yulia Tymoshenko, was supporting anti-Semitism because she has supported Tymoshenko. It's funny, I've never really heard Tymoshenko talk about the media and the Jews and like dog whistle and stuff like that. No. I've seen the propaganda. Yeah, seen that. None of it fits her character. The most legitimate thing they ever said was that she tried to cut a deal with Putin. Whether or not it was the best interest of Ukraine is largely up for debate. Whether or not she was immersed in a culture of corruption and should be expected as, you know, the owner of one of the most prosperous, or a representative of one of the most prosperous energy companies in Ukraine, shouldn't have excluded her company from that deal. But, you know, one must also consider that if you're Ukrainian and nobody's coming for your help, you know, nobody's coming to save you from Russia. All right? There's no reason to think anybody's coming to save you from Russia. Vladimir Putin wants to make a deal. Do you turn him down? I mean, it's like, does she let her company make $600 million? I think that was the amount. Or does she wind up on a hit list? Bear in mind, we're not talking about a fucking American. We're talking about a Ukrainian. But, obviously, she has made a political platform and has done a very effective job inspiring people to this effect of political, social justice, rule of law, national patriotism, and respect for international sovereignty. Cool. 3 hours and 20 minutes already. Yeah. And Mr. Paul Manafort. You know, when I first said that all this propaganda and the Republicans cooperating with it, or cooperating with Russians, and this is basically Russian propaganda being amplified by Republicans, you know I didn't know who the fuck Paul Manafort was. I just said I'm going to go on Final Fantasy and I'm going to do a Dark Aeon hunt. And they're just going to... Here's the Dark Aeons. Because, you know, Merlin. mysterious ways and whatnot. Then we got Manafort, and Gates, and Papadopoulos, and all these other different fucking guys. A total of 29 Russians now, or something like that. And it turns out that the further back we look, the longer this same shit connects. Since, around that 2011, 2012 time frame. Dating back even as far as 2009, when right after Obama was elected, and going back as far, in my opinion, as 2006, when Nancy Pelosi seemed to get wind of something that gave her leverage over the Bush administration. And I think one of the reasons why she's a big enemy of propagandists is because she knows what the fuck Russia's really up to. But anyways, I do thank Rachel Maddow for her wonderful contributions to needed knowledge. And I hope that people, again, the same way I usually hope that people take these things and wake up to the broader spectrum of this deception and how it goes back into our religious and educational institutions, not just our news media, quote unquote. But I think this example right here of how Manafort, the guy who became Trump's campaign chair in 2016, was doing work with this pro-Russian guy against Tymoshenko and against Hillary Clinton as far back as 2012, before they even invaded Ukraine. Had the chance to see, these people are invading Europe, maybe we went wrong, and then, no, we're going to help them take the fucking White House. There's the guy, Paul fucking Manafort. And he's singing like a little birdie. So the idea that my shadow investigation is going to pay off and is going to reveal the breadth of how far back this goes, and is going to wind up taking down a lot of people who are responsible for a lot of fuckery, seems a lot more likely now. But anyways, I'm going to have to call it a broadcast. It has been far too long. I guess we'll catch up on that another time, Carlos. But thanks to Mr. Rodriguez and Mr. Conway for hanging out and chatting. It's been very helpful and informative. And I hope you guys enjoyed the broadcast, and I hope anyone watching in the future enjoys this broadcast and finds it helpful and informative. But either way, if you don't mind, I would appreciate it if you click the little like button. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not subscribed already. Check your subscription if you are a subscriber, because it might just fucking disappear for no reason. You never know. I haven't verified that happens on this channel, but it used to happen on the old channel. Who knows? And don't forget the little dingy bell for notifications, because we'll pretend like the 60 people now. 60 people. Just keep on getting more subscribers, and there's been one extra person join us in the live broadcast. That makes a lot of sense, right? But maybe if somebody watches this in the future, if you click the little dingy bell for notifications, you can come join us and chat and hang out in the live stream. And I'd appreciate it if you did. But I appreciate you watching anyways, and have a good weekend, have a good Sunday, have a good week. I'll probably be on again in another 20 hours. Y'all take it easy, but don't take it all. Peace. Suddenly, for no reason, 2 more people just joined.
Lord, it takes my pain back to a place I don't understand. I know, it's in my heart, and baby, down in my soul. You, baby, you can't take it no more. No, I know I'm walking out that door the way it treated me too many times before. Don't you know you love me, baby, too? Oh, you know I want you there, I want to be right there with you. I know I gotta keep you by my side today I die. 'Cause baby, ecstasy is in my hand. Oh, when I'm holding yours in mine and walking in the sand. Oh, baby, you know it's fine. Oh, now you done and piss me off. You ain't done something you shouldn't have done. Baby, I'm mad. I'm going on. Oh, I'm going on. I can't take it, baby. I can't take it no more.